Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you wherever and whenever you are joining us. Welcome to our latest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. I am your host, as always, the coach Nick Vesci. I am joined by the man, Stephen Comlow.
Hello.
And our resident D-Gen gambler, AJ Pittis, is our guest host for tonight with his Dub Bears shirt on.
There we go. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you guys for having me.
Chicago all the way. AJ's filling in for the boy, Stephen Vesci, for those of you who follow us. He's not here tonight. His wife, Kayla, gave birth to their first daughter, Stella Sophia Vesci, on Saturday morning. So she's only... Thank you, Kamla. So Stella is only a few days old, so he is with her. Mom and baby are doing very well, especially from the pictures that I've seen. So we're all happy for them. Welcome to the WCME family. Stella, welcome to the Vesci family. I don't know if that's a positive welcome or not. You'll find out in a few years. Time will tell. Time will tell. But we're all extremely excited. We're very happy for you guys, and we're glad that you're not joining us under these circumstances. So we got our resident gambling expert to join us in AJ Pittis. Yeah. Just a couple notes for you guys before we get into our stuff for this evening. Our show is all about bringing you the most noteworthy and eye-catching things from the realm of sports competition over the past week. So we like to focus on the results of things that happen on the field. And one of our biggest goals, if not the biggest one, is to educate our listeners. If you learn something from when you're watching and listening to us, then we've done our job, right? Kind of like how back in the day, one of the biggest draws to watching highlights and stuff was that you learned about who was playing. You learned about the ramifications. Like, why does this matter that I'm watching it? That's kind of what we do. So we just want that to be our overarching theme. So keep that in mind whenever you're listening to us. You're hearing us go through stats and kind of discuss certain topics. That's what we're going after. Now, before we get started, just a quick shameless plug. If you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and X at WCME_sports. Visit us on our website at WCMEsports.com. We're also on Facebook, and our episodes, they drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. So you can take them with you wherever you go. Now, our top catch today, which is our most noteworthy thing that we thought happened that caught our eye the most, is the opening of the college football season. Now, technically there was week 0 that happened, but there were only a couple games. This past weekend was official week 1. All the teams were in action. It was awesome to see. It should be a national holiday, some people think. So it was really awesome to see all this unfold. As Kamlo and I were talking before we came on, what you see a lot in week 1s, especially from the college football season, you see some sloppiness. You see some discord in a lot of things, especially offensively for a lot of teams. And you see a lot of blowouts because you see some teams just have trouble getting it together. And you see a lot of teams, like your big-time teams, will purposefully play a cupcake or a snowflake or the little sisters of the poor. They'll purposely play them just because of that. They know that they're not going to have their A game if they happen to play their worst game of the year. At worst, they win by 30, so it doesn't affect them. So you see a lot of that in week 1. But we did have some good matchups, right? And want to get into that. So first off, the number 1 ranked team in the country, which is Georgia. Georgia dominated Clemson 34-3. And you could argue that Georgia didn't even play their best game either. So they beat the number 14 team in the country with a Hall of Fame head coach by 30, not playing their best. It just goes to show how good Georgia is. They have not, under Kirby Smart, they have not lost a regular season game since 2020. Think about how ridiculous that is. Their only losses in that time span, I think, were to Alabama in the SEC championship game.
40 straight?
What?
It's 40 straight wins?
40 straight regular season? Yeah, that's just so – it's asinine. We kind of talked about it, I think, in our college football thing last week, but it seems hard to not pick them to win the national title. It just – someone's got to prove that they can consistently not beat them, but just hang with them. And the only person that could do that was Nick Saban, and he's retired. So I don't care how tough their schedule is. I said that before. They could play all the other top 10 teams, and I still think they go undefeated, and at worst they lose one game. So they're that dominant, that much of a force. So that was kind of nice to see with all the kind of sloppy play that we saw, right? A lot of the blowout. It's nice to see a Georgia team look the part and feel the part. My next thing I have under here stays in the SEC, actually, and it is Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt beat AJ's Virginia Tech Hokies 34-27 in overtime. Vandy scored a touchdown to tie the game with less than 2 minutes left. So they were down by 7, scored the touchdown to tie it, and had a chance to win in regulation. They missed the game-winning field goal as time expired, just barely. It was a pretty good kick considering circumstances. But so they go to OT. The Vandy quarterback, Diego Pavia, who's a transfer from New Mexico. Is it New Mexico State or New Mexico?
I think he was New Mexico. Yeah, New Mexico State.
New Mexico State, I think.
Yeah.
Transfer from New Mexico State. He rushes the go-ahead touchdown in the first overtime session, and Tech is not able to answer, and Vandy goes on to win by 7. Yeah. The crazy stat in this is it's Vanderbilt had lost 61 straight games when trailing by 7 points or more in the fourth quarter. The last time they won a game when losing by 7 or more in the fourth was in 2016 against Western Kentucky. So that's kind of amazing, just that in and of itself. AJ, comments?
Yeah, if you were able to watch the game, unfortunately, like I was, the big takeaway was Tech did not come out to play in that first half. It was 17-3 going into halftime, and we barely got a field goal at the end of it. It was tough to watch in that first half. And then even another side note to that, you talk about sloppiness and just poor play and execution. Tech in the third quarter, I believe, has a penalty for having 2 players with the same number on the field, which is just,
I love those.
Yeah, just a mental mistake that ended up giving Vandy, instead of a punt and we getting the ball back, a field goal attempt where they end up making it. So, Nick, to your point where they tie that game up with 2 minutes left, really they should have been down 10. They were down 7. But it's classic Virginia Tech. You go out there and you have high hopes for the season like always, and you lay an egg right away. And I think Pry said after the game, Brent Pry, our coach, said this was a humbling loss that we may have needed. And a couple of too many players and probably fans as well were reading too many articles about how good we were going to be.
Humbling loss week 1? What the hell? Why do you need to be humbled week 1?
Well, because you need to know that your shit don't stink. You come in with no reason to not think you're the best, right? Yeah. So this gives you a reason to take a step back and say, you know what, maybe I wasn't working hard enough. Maybe I wasn't paying attention enough during film session, right? Maybe I wasn't putting in the extra reps or asking the right questions. So it puts a little more accountability on the players, which is what ultimately you have to have, especially at the collegiate level. There has to be accountability, just like any organization. That's what a college football team is. It's an organization. You have to have accountability at all levels. So he's probably saying that to kind of galvanize his team, but also to be like, hey, the season ain't over. Tech could theoretically, right, run the table and make the playoff. Where in years past, right, when the 4-team playoff and without the automatic conference champions, this loss means the season, all those hopes for that Tech had those lofty hopes, bringing back so many, the highest percentage of returners in production in the country, right? Those hopes would have been dashed immediately, but in theory, they're not, because all you have to do is win your conference, and this is a non-conference loss. So, yeah, it hurts. It looks bad. It's not what you want to see as Brent Pry tries to reestablish the Hokie brand. But at the same time, it's not the end of the world. It's not a loss. If you learn from it, then it becomes a lesson. And I think that's what he's trying to convey to his team there.
And Nick, I do want to give props out to Vanderbilt. They came out and played a pretty solid game, and that QB, he ran all over us. And as much as Vandy probably will still be the little brother in the SEC, I think they're going to be a much more competitive team this year. If they're not, then that was a really bad loss. But I think they're going to be a lot better.
I agree with you, because I said this before when CV did the SEC preview. I don't think the SEC top to bottom is as good as people want to make it out. I think there's a lot of bad teams, like your Mississippi States, your Arkansas, South Carolina I don't think is any good. Florida's not any good. I think there's a lot of teams there that Vandy can compete with, and don't be surprised if they win a couple SEC games this year. I wouldn't be shocked, because I think a lot of the other teams are overrated as well, right? I think Mizzou's overrated. Not that Vandy could beat Mizzou, but I just think that there's, like I said, some hope in Vandy country that this may not be an anomaly, that they can compete a little more this year. Next, turning our attention to Colorado and Coach Prime. His one son, the quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, he threw for 445 yards and 4 touchdowns. 3 of them went to Travis Hunter, the possible. I think should be a Heisman candidate every year for what he's able to do offensively and defensively. As Colorado, they survived playing North Dakota State. They won 31-26 because North Dakota State has been so good for so many years. They are essentially like playing a very good group of 4 or group of 5 conference team, right? They're like on the level of a JMU, right? These Boise States, these App State teams, they're NDSU is right up there with them. So that's in my opinion, a pretty solid win. I think that's a nice litmus test and a nice way to start their season for Colorado. They will take on Nebraska and Matt Rule next week. That same night, I believe, Noah Burnett for the University of North Carolina, he kicked the game-winning field goal with less than 2 minutes left as UNC beat the Golden Gophers of Minnesota in Minnesota 19-17. Now, I bet if that game is played in a couple months when it's cold, it might be a little different. But the kind of thing that played to UNC's advantage. But still a good win to go on the road. It's always hard to win on the road. Notre Dame, speaking of winning on the road, they were able to survive Texas A&M and first-year coach Mike Elko and all the 5-star talent that A&M has. They survived them in Kyle Field, which I think they came out and rated as like the toughest place to play when they did the EA game that came out. So they were able to survive them 23-13. It was Riley Leonard, the grad transfer from Duke, his first game as Notre Dame quarterback. And, I mean, that's as good of a win as any team had this week, I feel like. Just the circumstances, like we said, playing a week 1 game, it's hard to win a football game in general. It's even harder when you go into a hostile environment on the road and you're not completely ironed out because this is our first dress rehearsal. So thought that showed a lot of character from Notre Dame's standpoint. Especially they had their left side of their offensive line is a true freshman left tackle and a true sophomore left tackle who had never played a game. So to be able to go in there against that talent and win by 10 is very impressive. Another on the road impressive victory was Miami. The U, everyone wants to say, the U's back, and I said I'll believe it when I see it. So this is one win. I don't want to blow smoke all the way up their butts for it, but they crushed Florida. Now, Florida has been in disarray, it feels like, for a while now.
That's the right word.
Yes, Tebow was there.
and and Urban Meyer and all that stuff. It has felt like this has just been a revolving door of mediocrity down there in the swamp. But Miami went in there, won 41-17. Cam Ward, the transfer from Washington State, had 385 and 3 touchdowns. He looked every bit the part that you would expect from an experienced former, Power 5 conference quarterback. He looked very good. So it'll be interesting to see if he can keep that up against maybe some better opponents because, like I said, I think there are shockingly going to be a few more teams in the ACC that are better than Florida this year that he'll have to play, which you wouldn't normally say. But let's see what he does when he goes into some more hostile environments against some better teams. But a good start for the U. Sleeper, again, sticking with the theme of going on the road and getting it done. Boise State, who for a lot of people was their group of 5 conference champion pick to make the playoff. They went into Georgia Southern, which is you don't just go into Statesboro and walk out, with a win. You got to earn that down there. And they went in there. They won 56-45. Their running back, Ashton Gianti, he had 267 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's a force. He may be the best back in the country. Him, and you hear Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. He's right up there with any of the backs in the country. He's second to none, I think, because he's an experienced guy. He'll be their bell cow. But that was as far as wins go, I think that one's getting pushed under the radar. That's a really, really good win. And now Boise goes into Autzen Stadium to take on Oregon next week, who they struggled to beat an Idaho team. Now, Idaho's very good at the FCS level, but still Idaho, the Vandals, right? They're missing the Visigoths, right? They don't have enough to take down Rome just themselves, and you struggled with them at home.
Yeah,
so,
and Oregon, I will say the final score is a little deceiving in that game. Oregon out, I think they had almost 500 yards of offense and only 24 points to Idaho's 200 yards of offense. They definitely played a much better game, but at the end of the day, it's about scoring points, and they just did not do that against Idaho at home.
And then one thing, too, is they didn't push around Idaho like you would expect. Like I know that was the Stevie's biggest thing with Oregon is that they're tough, hard-nosed. They're going to beat you at the point of attack. I didn't see them beating Idaho consistently at the point of attack. I saw a lot of guys in Idaho grit their way and almost outplay these Oregon offensive and defensive linemen, which that to me may be the most concerning part, because an Oregon's always going to have the skill. And to me, their biggest question is always, can you match up with the Ohio States of the world, the Georgias of the world, the Texases? Can you match up with them in the trenches? Because in a lot of ways, that's where games are won and lost. And they need to take a big step forward if they want to see that. And I think playing Boise is going to be a really good test, a really good barometer to see where both programs are at. Because I think in a lot of ways, Boise knows more about themselves than Oregon knows about themselves. So I thought that was interesting. UNLV, they dominated Houston in a very surprise result for a lot of people. They dominated them 27-7. I think it was 27-0 for a lot of that game. I think Houston scored pretty late. It's the first season opening road win for UNLV since 2007. UNLV, alma mater of one Guy Fieri, by the way.
God.
Didn't think we were going to throw him out there tonight, did you, Kama?
I was hoping that he would never come up.
Yep, well, you're welcome. This game, Kamal, you said was your favorite game. You thought this was the best played game, but the USC LSU game, Woody Marks ran for the game-winning touchdown with 8 seconds left as the Trojans beat the Tigers 27-20 in the opening game in Vegas. So really good win for USC. What was amazing, at least for a lot of people, is that USC played some defense. Like they looked way more complete a team than a lot of people thought, especially after the last 2 years when it literally was just Caleb Williams and a rest of schmucks out there is what it felt like. So that is a very positive sign to see them beat an SEC team. Now,
then I will say, Nick, that was a good game played on both sides of the ball by both teams. Both quarterbacks executed well, both defenses executed well. It was just a very good, well-played football game, which I think highlights the fact that USC is playing defense again.
Yeah, it is kind of almost inexplicable that a team that can get so much talent and a recruiter like Lincoln Riley could not get like anything on the defensive side. But maybe this is a turning point. They're going to go into the Big Ten stadiums, right? They got to play some teams that like to be rough, that are going to be built inside out. How are you going to handle that? Well, you have to be tough. You got to play defense. You got to do that in the Big Ten. So maybe this is a good omen for them for success this year. They jumped way up in the rankings. I think they jumped like 10 spots just from that win. But it was a good win. You're right. They looked really good. Quarterback looked really good. Was it Miller Moss?
Moss. Moss. Yeah, Moss is his name. Or last name.
He looked very good. Nussmeier on the other side for LSU looked really good. So I thought a lot of positives for both teams in that. I know Brian Kelly was angry, almost despondent on the podium after the game, slamming his fist like someone giving a crazy war rally. But at the end of the day, like we said with the Tech loss, this is just one loss. LSU can still theoretically run the table. We're in a new era now where that one loss in a marquee matchup isn't going to end your playoff hopes. Like in years past, you probably would say LSU's got to run the table if they have any shot. They could still lose another game and get in, right? You got to keep those things in mind, and I think that's going to lessen the overreactions that we see from fan bases and players alike. I think you are going to see a little more buy-in from guys because they know they're not eliminated.
Yep.
The next one I'm going to get to, Florida State still has stuff to play for.
Yeah, and Nick, with LSU especially, I think in that SEC where, for right or wrong, the schedule is considered very strong. It's very hard to get through SEC. I think it's going to be really interesting as we get to the end of the year. What does a 1 or 2 loss ACC team, how does that match up as we talk about the later seeds versus a maybe 3 loss LSU team that, again, one of their losses to a really good Power 5 team, essentially on the road in Vegas. It was probably a little bit, it was well traveled by both sides, but it's a little closer to USC than it is to LSU.
Yeah. No, I mean, that to me is going to be a big storyline. Like you said, I could very easily see, you get a 1 or 2 loss ACC team being ranked well behind some 3, maybe 4 loss SEC teams. Yep. I don't necessarily think that's fair because, like I pointed out, the SEC is super top heavy to me. I think the bottom half of their conference is arguably worse than the bottom half of the ACC. So you can't just automatically say, oh, well, you have all these SEC wins. You're good. You need to examine who they beat, who they played, where they played them, when they played them. That needs to be taken into account more. And, the next thing we get to, kind of talks about, well, we said this earlier, how many teams can the ACC realistically get in the playoffs now, because Florida State lost again. And they lost to BC at home, so in Tallahassee. They lost 28-13. It's BC's first win in the Bill O'Brien era. Bill O'Brien from your Pats, their Cuomo. But the Seminoles, they're 0-2, first time since 2021. They got manhandled, though. BC pushed them around even worse than Georgia Tech pushed Florida State around. And that, to me, is the most concerning part of that loss, is that you can't win games if you get dominated at the line of scrimmage like that. And I think you might see more ACC teams take on that persona, knowing that, hey, we're not getting the 5-star talent. We have to win ball games. How are we going to beat these guys who walk in here thinking like their shit don't stink and that they're God's gift, right? So it's an interesting dynamic. I still think if you're going into a Power 5 conference and you're going to wind up with 2 losses, you need to be in the conversation. But I'm afraid what will happen is they'll write off Florida State and say Florida State can't get in now unless they win their conference, because they'll say, oh, their schedule's so weak. But they still have some people to play. Their season is not over. As much as the pundits want to panic and lose their mind, which in a lot of ways is rightfully so, because they should not be starting off 0-2. The season is not over.
Yeah, Nick, I think the biggest thing with Florida State compared to a loss by the LSU or even Virginia Tech is they've lost 2 games in conference before the end of week 1.
Yeah.
It's going to be really tough for them to now run the table. They could run the table and still, in theory, not even make the ACC championship game. And I think right now, especially kind of my big takeaway from this weekend is the ACC does not look like a conference that's going to end up getting 3 teams in. I think you're right. I think it's very deep. But you watch a couple of your supposedly top programs, your top 2 going into the season, Clemson get absolutely manhandled, and now Florida State look like they can't block anyone up front on both sides of the ball.
It's disconcerting. It is. And I think the biggest issue is the fact that the precedent's been set for playoffs and rankings, that it matters almost more where you start the season ranked than what you do during the season. So the fact that the 2 highest ranked ACC teams are going to come out and lay eggs, it almost doesn't matter how good Georgia Tech does, because Stevie was on point with them. I think Georgia Tech is really good. I think they have all the components to win that conference straight up, but it won't matter. They'll never be ranked ahead of any of those SEC teams. It does not matter how many games they win. It's because they didn't start off there. Right, you need to start off at number 10, and I think that is one of the hypocrisies of college football, is that less matters on the field than it does off the field in a lot of ways, and that's a shame.
And it feels like going out of this weekend, Miami's the team that's kind of left to make that jump. They really took it to Florida, and they looked really good. Where a lot of teams in the ACC have not looked very good so far.
Yeah,
so good. For the first time, people can walk around and wear the U shirts. There was a guy at work wearing one today, and he was walking around just haven't gotten to wear this in a while. I was like, yeah, well, rightfully so. You guys handled your business this weekend.
Yeah, agreed, Ed. It'll be interesting to see. It's college football is fascinating in a lot of ways, not just the traditions, but because of the fact that it can be so fluid and produce so many inexplicable, unexpected results. And, when we start to get into the ratcheting up of conference scheduling and more teams are stopping their tune-up games, especially this next week, you've got a lot of matchups like Michigan and Texas play. Yeah, you have more matchups like that are going on. We're going to start to see a lot of different things happen. We probably not going to know for sure who's like any teams in the playoff until the end of it, right? You may end of the season at that Army-Navy game, you may know a couple teams, right, for sure. Or right, are they going to do conference championships for Army-Navy? They probably will.
Yeah.
But whatever, the idea here is that even when the regular season is done, you're still going to be so much jumbling around. There's so much to be decided. It's going to be interesting. It's part of the fun of college football. Did want to give a nice shout out to South Carolina, the other SC. They survived ODU, the Monarchs, who play everyone tough. They do not get blown out. They, in a lot of ways, should have won that game in Columbia. They lost with a late touchdown run by QB Lenoris Sellers 23-19, but ODU, you don't want to see them on your schedule the same way a lot of the Sun Belt teams you don't want to see any team with a Dakota in your schedule. So thought that was give them some props, and at least some props for your boy Shane Beamer down there in Columbia getting a much needed W.
You know who we haven't talked about, and it was
Ron Dane.
Curious. No, because they went on a run last year, and they're kind of picking up right where they left off. We haven't talked about JMU.
I think that the reason for that is because they have a new coach. So you have that unpredictability. Yeah. It's hard. Their coach left to go to Indiana. Mm-hmm. But no, you're right. No one picked them to be their group of 5 team. They have as good a shot as anyone because of the circumstances of the playoff. Like, why not them? They have the pedigree. They've shown that they have the talent.
They won 30-7 this week, and their quarterback, you want to talk about people that went out and handled business? Their quarterback threw for 219 yards, rushed for 89.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think Charlotte is who they beat, right?
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on JMU this year. You know I love the Virginia schools. When schools in Virginia, it's the same way when March Madness rolls around. When the schools in Virginia do well, it makes me feel a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned something today with ODU and JMU joining the Sun Belt, now in the same division in the Sun Belt Conference. They created a rivalry type of thing because they never really played before. ODU hasn't existed that long, only 15 years their programs existed. And so they named the rivalry the Royal Rivalry because you have the Monarchs versus the Dukes.
Oh, that's sweet.
That is
there's
sweet.
Going to be some sick shirts.
Do we have a trophy yet for that rivalry?
I didn't get to see. Someone's going to have to look that up. They're going to have to be maybe like a scepter.
I would do a crown. Would you want a big crown?
A crown would be good.
I think
crown where half the crown is purple, the other half is blue or something like that.
Oh, that could be good. Or have a bunch of Virginia. The Virginia flag on it or somewhere.
That would be so. Even the crest that they have for it, the Royal Rivalry Challenge, the Town Bank Royal Rivalry Challenge. It's like a crest with like half like JMU purple and ODU like I guess light blue, sky blue. I don't know what their official color is.
I think it's just light blue.
It's like a light blue, yeah.
But
I think to see if they have any sort of trophy or anything.
So I think it's technically like the Commonwealth Cup, where there's a Commonwealth Cup trophy, but they have that whole like competition throughout the year where like the 2 teams earn points and the stuff they play against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the same thing as that. Whereas you win the Royal Rivalry in the football game, but your other sports are also competing against each other, which is kind of cool. I think it's a good thing.
Isn't that how Army and Navy do the Star? It's not just football.
Oh, that I don't know.
I'd have to look into it, but I think that sounds
a good question.
Kind of like that.
Yeah,
I'm looking this up. I'll break in if I find a picture of this trophy.
Thank you, Kamlo. Anything else, AJ, college football wise, before we move on?
Yeah, I think there was one game I think we missed, which was Penn State at West Virginia.
Oh, why did we miss that?
I know we were trying to be nice to Stevie. I think he was. He might not have had a good chance to watch too much of it, as his daughter was born, I think, 5 hours before kickoff. But I will say one takeaway. Yeah, one takeaway I have from that game is Penn State looks much better and much more improved on offense. Now, again, I'm not quite sure how good West Virginia's defense is right now, but they look just as good on defense. And I think if there was a team that was not ranked in the top 5 to make the playoff that I would put as a lock, I think Penn State was my team. The other big takeaway I had from this week, and it was, again, when you're watching a game at a bar, you can see multiple TVs and multiple games at once, is the difference in speed from Georgia and Clemson, especially on defense, it's just noticeable when you watch some of these other games and you just see that they're always in position, they're flying around the field. Some of that's probably just because they are just better and probably faster, but some of it also is because they were playing that big ranked game. They weren't coming half asleep. They really wanted to get that win on both sides. And, to your point, Georgia didn't play a great game in the first half, but Clemson did play with them there for a half. But that was my other big takeaway from this weekend watching a lot of college football is the speed of Georgia and Clemson on defense, at least.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, at least to me, there's one clear-cut number 1 team in the country. Someone's got to come into their house, dethrone them, and take it from Georgia. Because you could also argue last year they should have been in the playoff. There's a very good argument that even though they didn't win the SEC, they still finished with one loss and are two-time defending champs, right? There are a lot of arguments to be made there. So to me, you can't pick against them, and they showed that was abundantly clear that we ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, and Nick, as the generic gambler, I would know some of the stat, but it's something like as a double-digit favorite or a 2-touchdown favorite, Georgia has covered the spread something like 18 times straight now. They really come out and wallop teams they should beat, and they were a 2-touchdown favorite against Clemson, and they exceeded that by a couple touchdowns. So yeah, they're hard to pick again. You're going to see a lot of big lines from Georgia that you just can't pick against this year.
I agree. Kamlo, anything before we move on?
Yeah, real quick, back to this Royal Rivalry stuff. I'm just going to read you what's on ODU's website. Points are awarded for head-to-head competition or for the best finish in mutual conference championship events in sports where head-to-head competition does not occur. Half points are granted in case of a tie. Both regular season and postseason matches are included in the calculations. At the end of the school year, the school that earns the most points will host the trophy, which is currently being designed by students in both schools' art departments. JMU won the first challenge in 2022, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I like it.
That's
awesome. Love rivalries. I can't wait till we get to rivalry week for this season. That's
going to be fun.
Yeah, like the best part. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic. And this week we're going to talk about the U.S. Open, the U.S. Tennis Open happening right now in Flushing Meadows, Queens at the USTA, essentially tennis headquarters. So some great stuff happening. We have the quarterfinals set in both the men's and women's singles. We had there's actually matches going on right now as we're recording. We had 2 matches earlier today that we'll get to. But just a quick recap. On the men's side, you have number 1 seed and the number 1 player in the world, Jannik Sinner. He's going to take on number 5, Daniil Medvedev, who's a former champion at this tournament. One of the best, if not the best, hardcourt player out there right now. Then we have number 25, Jack Draper from the UK. He will take on number 10, Alex de Minaur from Australia. Draper getting there because he had some favorable upsets happen in front of him that, definitely aided in him getting to this point. And number 12, American Taylor Fritz is going to take on number 4, Alexander Zverev, and number 9, Grigor Dimitrov, who is playing like the best. He's having the best year of his career, and he's old, like mid-30s. He'll take on another American, number 20, Francis Tiafoe, who's a DMV kid. By the way, I think Hyattsville, Maryland is where he is from.
Nice.
And over on the women's side, the number 1 player in the world, the French Open champion, Iga Swiatek. She's going to take on another American, number 6, Jess Pegula, who I think we said before, Pegula, their family owns the Bills and the Sabres, I believe. Next matchup, we have number 2, Hadaj Maya. She'll take on Muchova. Muchova's coming off some injuries, but she's always, I believe she's made major finals before and major semis before. Number 26, Paula Badosa. She'll take on another American, number 13, Emma Navarro from
UVA.
From UVA. Thank you. And then number 7, Zhang, who is the Olympic champion. She's going to take on number 2, Arina Sabalenka, who's a multiple-time major champion. Again, another fantastic hardcourt player is Sabalenka. So, couple worthy notes. If you noticed, absent from those quarterfinal lists are Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic. Alcaraz lost in the second round to the Dutchman Botic van de Zandschulp in straight sets. Yeah, van der Zandschulp. Straight sets. He got kind of demolished in that match. And Djokovic, who's the defending champion, he lost to Alexei Popyrin in the third round. So this is going to be the first year, this is the crazy stat, first year since 2002 that Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, or Novak Djokovic will not win a major. This is the first time that you'll look at the list of major winners and one of those 3 names will not be on there for this year. That's a pretty remarkable statistic when you think about all the people that have come before and, and all the guys they've played against that were clearly the most dominant and maybe the 3 best ever.
I think
the times are a changing.
I think they definitely are the 3 best ever, but part of that stats because Alcaraz had won, 2 of the last 4 majors or 3 majors?
But Alcaraz won in Wimbledon. He won in the French Open because remember he did the channel, right? Everybody out of the channel.
Yep.
And so are you queuing that up?
No.
Kamala?
No, I'm
damn,
not.
Damn. He did not win in Australia. Yannick Sinner won in Australia.
Okay.
So you're right. So you had Alcaraz, take those 2, Sinner take 1, and it was up to Djokovic to win this one. And he was the defending champion. He wasn't able to do it. But yeah, you're right. We talked about this before. It's an emergence of a new generation. These guys are aging out, but still 21 years. It's been 21 years that those guys dominated this sport. That's unheard of. That doesn't happen, right? That in any sport. So that's pretty amazing.
I'm trying to think of any sport at any time, and maybe you could argue some for football, where you had the greatest ever at their positions or their sport playing against each other all the time. And football is kind of the only one I could think of a little bit here with like Manning and Brady and now Mahomes. But even then, it's I don't think it's even close to this. This has been just dominance from these 3 people.
That was the first thing that came to mind too, AJ, was Brady and Manning, because you could look at the number of championships they won, because they combined for 8, 9 championships over the course of a 20-year period. So almost half the championships are won by those 2 guys. And then you factor in that Aaron Rodgers has one in there, and a lot of people consider him to be, one of the greatest ever. And then you have Mahomes win his last few, so you could say that those 4 guys have won 60% of the, maybe even more percentage of the championships in a 25-year span. So that was the first thing that came to my mind too, was that with the quarterback play. But you're right. I mean, maybe some baseball stuff when you had the era of like Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays, and I think Hank Aaron is in there, and you had a lot of different guys during that. That could be one. But you're right. I don't remember, a top of that were that dominant, where pencil these guys in for basically every major that 2 of them are going to be in the final.
Yeah.
And one of them's going to win. It's pretty remarkable. Getting back to the stuff now, Francis Tiafoe, the guy we just said, they're a local guy. One of my favorites to watch. I love him. But he beat Ben Shelton in 5 sets of another fellow American in their 3rd-round matchup. That was a rematch of their epic quarterfinal match at the U.S. Open last year that Shelton won. And then Tiafoe beat Popperin to reach the quarters. It's the 2nd straight year Tiafoe's made the quarters. He's the first American man to reach the round of 16 at the U.S. Open in 5 straight years since Andre Agassi from 01 to 05. He's the first American man to reach the quarters at the U.S. Open in 3 straight years since Andy Roddick in 06 to 08. And he's playing, I think, either right now or later tonight, and he's looking for his 2nd Grand Slam semifinal. The last time he made a semi at a major was the 2022 U.S. Open. And you're going to hear more Andre Agassi and Andy Roddick references than you ever thought you're going to hear, because we're seeing things that these American men are doing in this tournament and this year that haven't been done since those guys. A good 15, 20, 25 years since we've seen American men's tennis perform at the level that we're seeing from these guys. So, if you wanted to hear Andre Agassi and Andy Roddick be mentioned a lot, you tune into the right show. The aforementioned Emma Navarro from UVA, she won her round of 16 matchup against fellow American Coco Gauff. It was a rematch of their round of 16 match in Wimbledon that Navarro won. And so Navarro was able to come out the winner again for the 2nd straight time in the 2nd straight major. So it's kind of a bummer that they're having to play each other. You'd like to, if they're going to have to play each other later in the tournament. But, pretty awesome there. And earlier today, Navarro beat Badosa to reach the semis, the first time she's ever made the semifinals in a major. Coming into this year, she had never gotten out of the 1st round at the U.S. Open. So she's having the year of her career right now. So in the semis is pretty amazing. She'll face the winner of Zhang and Sabalenka, which I thought was very cool.
Can we stop on Coco Gauff for a second?
Sure.
Because I've been tuning into the U.S. Open, and I've been watching Emma Navarro specifically because I found out she's a Red Bull athlete. I think that's awesome. Nick, you and I were talking a little bit about it on the show earlier. But I want to talk about Coco Gauff for a second because she looked like she was just out to ocean with no paddle or compass in that game. Did you? And they've talked a little bit about it. I've read a couple articles from tennis pundits, but it's not really like covered on ESPN that well, because I'm guessing it just doesn't draw views or whatever. But a lot of people are speculating that she's frustrated with her coach, that she wants to fire whoever her coach is, because there were multiple times where you could see, like, in that match, like, she's just constantly, like, looking up at the coach's box, and is just getting nothing back. To the point where even tennis bad boy Nick Kyrgios came out and said, if she put it out there on social media, pretty much said, if she fires her coach, I'll coach her.
Well,
because I feel like she's just having, like we talked in the realm of tennis, we talked so much about her early on, and we've just seen her kind of struggle and not dominate like a lot of people would have expected her to.
So one of the reasons you wouldn't hear that cover on ESPN is her coach works for ESPN. Brad Gilbert's been an analyst for ESPN for years and years. And so when he's done coaching her, he goes into the broadcast booth and is being an analyst. So that wouldn't be something that they would broach. It's kind of I don't know, would seem kind of unprofessional.
It's a bad look.
So let's just roast our colleague here while he's sitting here after all the work he's done for us, right? So I think that's one reason you see it. Coco, to your point, she gets unfairly labeled as like the next Serena because of how good she's been at an early age. I would say she's more like Bryce Harper, where Bryce was labeled as like the greatest, going to be the greatest ever, right? And Bryce will be in the Hall of Fame, right? He has multiple MVPs. He led the Phillies to a World Series. He doesn't have that ring yet, but he's got all the All-Star teams. He's going to finish with all the things, right? He'll be in the Hall of Fame. That's where Coco's at. Coco's not winning every tournament, but that's because that's so hard to do. We just got done talking about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic doing that, and Serena did that. And those are the only 4 people that really have ever done that. Like, people just don't do that. It just doesn't happen in tennis. But Coco already has a couple majors. She won the U.S. Open last year. Believe she won another major. I think she has 2, and she's not yet 21. Right, she's still 20 years old. So to be able to have 1 to 2 majors under her belt, maybe last year was her first. So you'll have to fact check me on that. But to just have any under your belt by the time you're 21 and 20 years old is a remarkable achievement. I mean, she's still on her way. She's still got some maturity things that iron out, right? She's not there yet. But Serena wasn't there yet. Yes, Serena won when she was young too, but she didn't go on that roll where she was a dominant force really to kind of like her late 20s, right? So you got to remember that, put that in perspective. Coco's still, third seed in this tournament. She's still every major or Grand Slam the U.S.'s best chance to win, male or female, right? So you got to remember those things. I think Emma is a hard matchup for Coco because Coco's used to being able to out-athletic anyone she steps on the court with, and she can't do that with Navarro. Navarro is incredibly athletic, has so much guile, is able to play she has every shot in the bag, and she's improved her power and her pace on all of her ground strokes to the point where Coco is going to have to adjust to beat her. Like, Coco's game just doesn't match up well, and I think that's the frustrating part.
She was also the defending champ coming into this.
Yeah, like I said, she won last year. I thought she might have had another major. That may just be her only major.
She might. I don't know. I just quickly clicked through like all of her results.
Yeah.
And we've kind of talked about it before. Well, I guess a couple things really is like, I think something else to take into consideration is the surface that they're playing on. And I also think that you also have to consider the matchups too. I mean, Emma Navarro, that girl's a stud. I really like watching her play. Watching her match earlier this afternoon was a lot of fun. But I also have a big problem with what is that? Where did they play today? Was that Arthur Ashe Stadium that they played today?
You gotta think, that all these quarter and semifinals are going to be played on Arthur Ashe or Louis Armstrong.
I got an issue. I got an issue with that stadium.
Well, here's a tissue.
Thank you. They're going to need the architects of Arthur Ashe Stadium are going to need it because I'm going to tear them a new one. Why would you have an open dome tennis court where the players are playing east to west? Did you watch that? Half the court was unplayable in the afternoon matchup because anything comes at you like hard and fast, or even when you're serving on the wrong side of the court, you're looking dead in the sun. It's all from the second set on, late first set on, is all anyone could talk about. Is like, well, yeah, if you're in the sun, you're at a huge disadvantage here because you're getting your retinas burned wide open. It was like, and even from like watching on a television perspective, it's difficult to watch because like the way like the camera has to kind of like subtly track the ball going in and out of that shadow. Oh my gosh, it's unwatchable.
Yeah,
I have a big problem with that.
Yeah, you would think for the biggest arena in tennis, right? I mean, in one of the most storied arenas in the sport, you're right. You'd think you wouldn't have that, but I think it goes back to the fact that that the stadium was built years ago. Like, you're not thinking about that as much. You probably the fields and these tournaments years and years ago didn't have as many people in it, didn't have as many rounds. So you're thinking that we could play most of these games later when that sun's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I that just spitballing. I'm not sure. Yeah. I know they have a roof, so they could have closed it if they wanted to. But it was a beautiful day, right? You want to keep it open. But what's also interesting about Arthur Ashe? That stadium, it's not a fully enclosed dome. So they built the stadium, then they built the roof around it, and there's an opening that's like the size of like a window or a door that if you were sitting in the like upper deck is open. Like, you could look out and like hawk loogies on the people down below. And
why
so
is that what you go to?
Why is that not what you first think about?
Why is that the first thing you think about, Nick?
Would you rather me said drop pennies on people?
I think it should be good.
Yeah, no, that's
it's interesting. It's an interesting concept, and I'm sure the reasoning for it was that this is going to cost way less than if we just build a new stadium, right? And to have it that way, it's still though, when the games matter the most, they're playing them at night there, so you're not having that issue. So I would almost argue it's more of a scheduling issue than it is necessarily the architects and the way the stadium's oriented. It's a scheduling thing, having these games because we need to fit each. We can't have these games happening at the same time or these matches happening at the same time for television's sake. So we're going to have Emma Navarro's happen at like 11 noon when it really all these should be happening at when the sun sets.
Yeah, because up until the quarterfinals, they split the matches between Arthur Ashe and Louis Armstrong stadiums. And then once the quarterfinal happens, the field is so small that it's, all right, we can run these in succession, right? We'll have one match on, they'll walk off, the next match will walk out. And everything will get played at Arthur Ashe Stadium. But, like, if you're the later matchup, God help you. Are you not allowed to... Is it bad form to wear sunglasses?
I think it's one of those, at least from my experience, like playing baseball and golf. Yeah, I can see it, but I don't see it, if that makes sense. Right? No, like, I see it's there, but my reaction, my reflexes to it, my hand-eye, it's just not... It's not... There's a disconnect there because you have an extra thing in front of you. So I think that's more of it.
Yeah, and also, like, I guess to Emma Navarro's credit, she wasn't wearing a visor or anything either. But like you could tell, like when she would go up to serve, like they even made a point to talk about her and Badosa. Am I saying that right? Badosa?
Yeah, Paula Badosa.
Their serves were noticeably slower when they were serving facing the sun.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta get it in, and I'm gonna take some. I mean, it's a strategy. They're not the only people that's ever happened to it at a Grand Slam or any tournament. They, we can sit there and say this is ridiculous for such a high stakes match, but tennis people would say this is just what happens. This could have happened in Cincinnati to you. This could have happened in Montreal. This could have happened. It
happens in Dallas every Sunday. Dallas has that same problem with their little kind of window you can knock loose off of, Nick. Where the sun comes in, if you're facing the wrong way, it's hard to throw down the field at like right at the end of the second quarter.
Yeah, that is true.
Yep.
Well, I don't think would matter for Dallas. Let's just be real. The Cowboys are gonna they're gonna chuck games away, figuratively and literally. Yeah, we're spitting now. That's what we're doing. Moving on, Jess Pegula, who we talked about earlier, this is her 7th career quarterfinal at a Grand Slam. However, she is 0 for 6 in her career in quarters at Grand Slams. She's never made it past this, so she's looking for her breakthrough. Like we said, she's gonna take on the number one player in the world, Iga Swiatek. So it's gonna be a tough matchup for her, but that'd be interesting to see if she can break through for that. Brandon Nakashima from UVA. He reached the round of 16 at this Grand Slam after beating number 15 Holger Rune in the first round. Then he beat number 18 Musetti in the third round. Musetti, I believe, was a semifinalist at Wimbledon, and I think got pretty far at the Olympics as well. So he beat some really good guys to make it there. Very impressive. I thought that was nice to see from Nakashima get that far. I think he came into this ranked number 50 in the world, so we'll see if he's the next American to get move up there with the other guys. And then, speaking of Americans up there, talked about him earlier, but Taylor Fritz. Taylor Fritz, he beat number 8 Casper Ruud. Casper Ruud is a 3-time, I believe, major finalist. So he's been close tons of times. He beat Ruud to make the quarters, and that set up this rematch against Alexander Zverev from their time at Wimbledon. Wimbledon this year, they played in the round of 16. Fritz won in 5 sets. Famously, Zverev said this time around, he's like, well, you know what? I was injured in Wimbledon, so this is going to be different this time. Well, guess what? Taylor Fritz won again, this time in 4 sets. He won earlier today to make his first career Grand Slam semifinal. This year, he has 4 ATP top 10 wins in majors. That's the most by an American man since, do you want to take a guess?
Andre Agassi.
Oh. Since he had 5 in 1999. He's the first American man to reach the second week in all 4 majors since Andre Agassi in 2003. He's the first American man to reach the quarterfinals in 3 majors this year. So he reached the quarters at Wimbledon as well, like we said, since Andy Roddick in 2007. And this year, Taylor Fritz has won 16 matches in majors. That's the most by an American man since Andy Roddick won 16 in 2009. So I told you wanted to hear Andy Roddick and Andre Agassi over and over again. That's what we got this segment. That's just, again, telling us how good these guys are playing. And we didn't even mention Tommy Paul. Tommy Paul lost to Sinner last night. He had a chance to get to the quarters as well. And he's a former semifinalist at Australian Open. So good stuff here. Good stuff if you're an American tennis fan. Like I said, we already have 2 punched their ticket today, Taylor Fritz and Emma Navarro in their first career Grand Slam semis. And, at this point, especially with the people who have been eliminated, this is I think anyone's tournament on both sides. I don't think you're sitting there saying, okay, good for you guys, you're just going to get crushed by, Federer or Nadal. That's just not happening because those guys aren't here. The door is open. Let's see if we can get it done. It would be amazing. That matchup between Dimitrov and Tiafoe that's happening either right now or later tonight, the winner of that will play Fritz. So if Tiafoe is able to win that guarantees the Americans to have a shot at a championship, regardless of any of the other results. So I think that would be really, really cool. Anything else tennis-wise before we move on?
Nope.
I love it. That's going to bring us to our baseball segment this week, which is brought to you by Bobo's Fine Chicken in Virginia Beach. Visit them on Shore Drive near Chicks Beach and grab a chicken sandwich and some seasonal sides on your way to a ball game or to the beach. They just posted they have some okra and stewed tomatoes. It looks fantastic. I don't know if you ever had any of that stuff before. It looked really good. I was about to go get me some.
Got to bring some up this weekend, Nick.
Maybe. We'll see. Yeah. I don't want to ruin my my Torchies fix when I go up there, but I may have to snag some Bobos on the way back. But Bobos in baseball, they ain't nothing better. First thing baseball-wise, Corey Seager. He hit his 200th career homer in the Rangers 2-1 win over the White Sox on Thursday. He is the 10th shortstop ever with 200 or more homers. Can you guys name any of the other 10?
Ryan Sandberg, I believe, is one.
Ryan Sandberg played second base.
I totally blanked on that for a second. Yeah.
Shortstop. Who's number one? Kamlo, you should know number one.
Cal Ripken Jr.
Cal Ripken Jr., 353 home runs as a shortstop. He is number one. Then we have A-Rod is next. Ernie Banks, that's the one you should have known, AJ.
Yep.
Mr. Cub. He's number 3 on the list. This other one, Kamlo, do you want to take the guess at number 4?
Tejada.
Miguel Tejada, number 4. Number 5 is Derek Jeter, number 2. Then you have Francisco Lindor, who Stevie brought up earlier this year about, is he a Hall of Famer? When you see something like that and you see the guys who are ahead of him on a list like this, it does make you think if he keeps producing, he can be in the conversation. Right? Tejada had a chance to be in the conversation if he didn't cheat. And if he didn't drop off precipitously at the end of his career because he was cheating. But Lindor, maybe. I was skeptical. I'm still skeptical on it.
Lindor's not even 30 yet, right? Isn't he still fairly young?
He's probably like 30, probably 30, 31. Yeah. Jimmy Rollins is next on the list, who I love. I think he just deserves more Hall of Fame consideration. Ultimately, he's not going to get in. He's going to fall under Hall of Good, but he was fantastic. They have Troy Tulowitzki, who, if we remember, for a few years there, stud. And then the incomparable, how could we forget him? Vern Stevens is the other one. Good old Vern.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
Obviously. How do we forget Vern?
I think home run hitting shortstops. We're going to talk about Vern.
I think Vern played for the St. Louis Browns, who, Kamala, you'll know, they became the Baltimore Orioles. So I believe that's who Vern played for. Sticking with the Orioles and shortstops, your boy Gunnar, I hardly know her, Henderson, he tied an Oriole franchise single-season record for home runs by a shortstop when he hit his 34th home run of the year on Monday. He tied it with, Kamlo, who are the two people he tied it with?
Tejada and Ripken.
Yeah, Tejada and Ripken, right? Gosh, who would have thought we're going to rip out Andy Roddick, Andre Agassi, Miguel Tejada, and Cal Ripken?
I couldn't be happier.
Dozens of times during this show.
Couldn't be happier. It should happen more, really, if we're being honest.
Sure. We'll go with that. Framber Valdez of the Houston Astros, he threw 7 no-hit innings against the Royals, but the Houston bullpen blew the lead. They gave up a game-tying 2-run homer in the 9th to Paul DeJong. And then, though, Jose Altuve, speaking of cheaters, Jose Altuve hit a walk-off double in the 9th as the Astros beat the Royals 3-2 on Friday. Another couple interesting notes from that series. A couple games later, I believe it was another Houston win. I think it was 7-2 win. But in that game, Bobby Witt and Yordan Alvarez each hit their 30th home runs of the year. And Bobby Witt became the first Royal ever to have back-to-back 30 home run seasons. And Yordan Alvarez now has 4 straight 30 home run seasons. So it just shows how good those guys are. They're
special too, man.
Yeah.
It's like not just like for an individual, but like for a franchise too. You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time we ever like felt compelled to talk Kansas City Royals? You know,
it was 10 years ago when they won in 2015. They had that team, but they didn't have dudes putting up numbers like him. No, they had a solid defensive team, base running team, great bullpen, and they had a lot of guys that could do a lot of different things. Right, your Ben Zobrist of the world coming over, Sal Perez, Mike Moustakas, Alex Gordon. Right, you had Eric Hosmer, you had all those guys who could do these things, but they ain't hitting 340 or whatever with 30 bombs and 40 steals. They're not doing that, and Bobby Witt is in that same ballpark, which we talked about is so tough to hit in. So I thought that was cool to see that.
Awesome.
The Cincinnati Reds, they were rallied from down 6-1 to the Oakland, Sacramento, Las Vegas A's, and they were able to take the lead 7-6. But the A's scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th to take the lead back 9-7. Then the Reds scored 3 runs of their own in the bottom of the 9th to win the game, thanks to a 2-run single by T.J. Friedl for a 10-9 victory. That probably the wildest game we'd have seen this week. Next note, kind of on the downer spectrum, but Chicago-based. Next couple things are Chicago-based, AJ. The Chi Sox, the White Sox, they have lost a franchise record coming into play on Tuesday. 108 games. The previous record was 106. Their record stands now at 31-108. They're on pace to break the single-season loss record of 120 losses held by the expansion 1962 Mets. Their win percentage of .223 is also on pace to break the 1916 Philadelphia A's record of .235.
Dude.
They have only won 4 games since the All-Star break.
Nick, we haven't even recorded AJ's special segment yet. You have to lighten up on the guy, man. What are we doing?
He's a Cubs fan, though. I
know. Go easy on him.
Well, I
want him back.
But I will say this with with my family, though, they've been hearing about it from us, all the Cub fans this summer, the White Sox fans in Chicago. It's bad out there. Nick, I think I saw a stat. What's their one starting pitcher? I think he's lost.
Flexen.
He's lost his. They've lost all 20 of his starts or something this year.
Yes, they haven't won a game that he started this year. Not that he has 20 losses. They just haven't won a game that he's been the starter.
Oh no.
There's also again, I do a lot again. The general gambler over here, but projecting out some like over-unders for pitcher props for outs. It's if a team is pitching against the White Sox, I have to account for extra like 30% more outs they'll record than like an average team. The next closest team is like 12%, and that's Colorado. Or not Colorado, I'm sorry. It was it's the offense for Colorado playing away. You have to kind of average that in, but they're that bad. It is that bad.
It's nuts. It's almost honestly sad. Like you don't want to root for teams to lose, but it's also it's like a train wreck. Like you don't want to see it, but you can't look away.
No,
like you almost need to watch it. Like and it sucks too because their interim manager is Grady Sizemore, the great Grady Sizemore, who was awesome as a player. Loved him, but it's rough to see.
Dick,
man,
do we think Dan Orlovsky as a quarterback was worse for the Detroit Lions, or this pitcher for the White Sox is having a worse season? The Detroit Lions
I think if you asked our Guatemalan viewership, they would stand up and scream that it was Dan Orlovsky 100% running out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah. But I mean, starting 20 games in baseball and not getting a single win is...
But some of that, too, as a baseball person, is not all on him.
No.
Right? Because theoretically, he could pitch and give up 2 runs, and the White Sox are so bad that they can't score runs.
Yeah.
Because they've gone through huge run-scoring droughts this year, too. So, I'd need to see his ERA and his WHIP. But the fact that they haven't won a start that he's had is mind-blowing. Now, I will say, on the flip side, on the positive part for Chicago, your Cubbies are on a heater right now. They beat our Nats 14-1 on Sunday. It was their 6th straight win. Hey. The Cubs scored 99 runs in a 10-game span. So basically they were averaging 10 runs a game. That's the second most runs scored in any 10-game span since 1900. Good. Since 1900.
Yep.
So the Cubbies have found something here. Craig Counsell has unlocked some little magic.
Yeah. And
they're making a run now at the playoffs.
They're 3.5 games back coming into today, and I wish they had won last night. It would have been 2.5. But we kind of played our way back into a playoff race, which means they'll let me down later this year. So,
in typical Cubs fashion.
Yep.
But I did think that was kind of amazing that they are on. Like I said, they're on a heater. Let it ride. The Cardinals, they beat the Yankees 14-7 on Sunday. Jordan Walker, who just got called back up, like literally the day before, he went 5 for 5 with a homer, 3 RBIs. It's the first 5-hit game for a Cardinal since Matt Carpenter in 2018. Walker's also the youngest Cardinal to have a 5-hit game since we all remember him. Rogers Hornsby in 1916. We're getting some deep cuts here tonight. This is kind of
very deep cuts.
Very deep cuts. And last thing I have on here, Josh Young of the Rangers, he had a walk-off 3-run homer in the 10th off of the amazing Mason Miller. So that's what makes that even that impressive. He hit this off Mason Miller, who's been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Granted, he's playing for the Oakland, Sacramento, Las Vegas A's, but Texas was able to win that game 6-4. Anything I missed before we move on?
Yes. Yes, big miss.
Is this more Orioles crap?
Absolutely, it's more Orioles stuff. Big miss. So they're in a series with the White Sox right now, which I think kind of takes away the luster of this a little bit. But so last night in their game against the White Sox, it was the first time I think in Orioles history, every single Oriole that was on the starting lineup registered a hit and a run in their 13-3 win over the White Sox, and they are on pace to do that again tonight.
That's I think pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool.
I guess one thing I did miss was we talked so much about Ohtani and Judge. I didn't even mention them, but Ohtani the other night did have 3 stolen bases, I believe, against Arizona. I think Ohtani sits 6 home runs and 4 steals away from 50-50.
Yep, that's wherever he's at. That was gonna be my one thing.
Amazing.
Also, random stat. Do you guys know? So his OPS right now is a .993. It's the best in the NL. Do you know how many seasons Barry Bonds had above a 1 in his career?
How 9.
Many?
It's 15.
15.
I understand there's some allegations out there on some things he probably did, but
allegedly did.
Allegedly,
AJ, careful there.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I think we do. That era gets sullied, but man, was Bonds good before any of the stuff that went on. Holy crap, was he good? The Pirates Bonds was phenomenal. The early Giants Bonds was phenomenal. We talked about last week. He was like the second person to ever go 40-40, I think, after Canseco.
Yep.
And yeah, he had that stuff that we're seeing from these guys like a Trout. That was Bonds, and Bonds on a different level too. So it just does stink. But yes, I totally believe that. But there are some stupid Barry Bonds stats out there that just make you go, how? Like what? It almost like it makes you think it didn't matter that he was allegedly cheating because it's that crazy, his statistics.
He was the best player of the era, whether you want to say there was cheating involved or not. He was better than all the other guys doing steroids.
Yeah, that's the key. He was that much better. That's why and the crazy thing is that's why he's not in the Hall of Fame, and why David Ortiz is because Ortiz doesn't stick out as much because he wasn't the best, but yet he was in the Mitchell report. He tested positive for steroids, so he's on the same report as Clemens and all those guys, and yet we put him first ballot Hall of Fame. Well, we forget about it because he didn't hit 800 home runs. He didn't win 7 MVPs. Like almost Clemens and Bonds were too good. They get punished for it because we say, well, yeah, they were only that good because they cheated.
Yeah.
Well, we never had that conversation with David Ortiz or some of these other guys, right? So it's that
nail that sticks out that gets hammered down.
I like that.
There we go.
I like. Let's end on that for our baseball segment. That'll be the title. That's the title. I'm gonna mark that. That's the title of our show.
I gotcha.
This week is that
the nail that sticks out that gets hammered down.
Yep. So that's gonna do it for our baseball segment, sponsored by Bobo's Fine Chicken in Virginia Beach. Visit them on Shore Drive near Chicks Beach Monday through Saturday for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Enjoy handcrafted meals, seasonal sides, and local brews. We found out, Kamala, that they have beer.
Oh, yeah.
There. Bobo's in baseball, they ain't nothing better. So that will move us on to one of our other favorite segments, which is our Mimosa Minute for the week, sponsored by Maine & Co., the creators of the modern mimosa. Visit them at mainsip.com and follow them on Instagram at maine.co to stay up to date on new releases and order yours today. Maine & Co., championing women's athletics since 2020. My first thing, and I suspect Kamala probably has this too, is Angel Reese. We talk about her a lot on the show. Her rebounding prowess is legendary. Right? We talked about it last week, but this week she set the WNBA single-season rebound record. Not just rookie record, ever record. She had 418 through 32 games, which I did the math. I believe that's about 13 a game. The record was previously held by another LSU product, Sylvia Fowles, who had 404 in 34 games in 2018. So she has that many more rebounds than her, 2 less games. She's an animal. Like it does people who, when we played, we had to go do the dirty work and get the rebounds. It's nice to see. And then I don't like the haters saying, oh, well, she's just getting her own misses. She got garbage rebounds. Bullshit. I'm calling Boshi on that. I don't even care if that happens. You're still doing this against the best players in the world. There's a different level of tenacity that's involved. And like when we talk about best rebounders, everyone always brings up on the men's side Dennis Rodman, who was able to read the flight of the ball against where it was going to hit on the backboard better than almost anyone ever. And to record what Angel Reese is doing, you have to be able to do that. I don't care that you get a couple gimmies, whatever. No. Boshi. Calling it that's
in the grand scheme of things, your own rebounds is kind of a drop in the bucket, but yeah, you have to have that hunger to not take a shot off.
And the effort, to take the effort to go get the ball is a lot, because then you're going to have to sprint the furthest of anyone else to get back down the court on defense, or if you're grabbing or on offense.
especially for a big body.
Yes.
It's taxing.
And Nick, with Angel Reese, too, again, she's still a rookie. She's only going to probably get better here the next couple of years. If she can just figure out how to get a little bit more efficient with those putback shots, I mean, she could become a real force in the league. She's only averaging 13 points right now, which I say only. But, I mean, if she could figure out a way to get her shooting percentage up to the mid-40s, it's 17, 18, 19 points a game plus the rebounds.
And no one walks into the show polished either.
No.
For a rookie, it's damn good. Yes. The work is cut out for her, and she's got that dog in her to where their game's gonna get there.
It's also just, I think, good for the WNBA in general to have some of those faces break some of these records to bring some more viewership to it. As much as we could talk about Caitlin Clark and how some things probably could have handled better, I think it's good to start to build that rivalry. You want the Magic Bird type thing back into a major sport like this. If Angel Reese becomes a dominant force and Caitlin Clark can continue to get better and improve and bring her team up, I mean, you could have a lot of really great matchups with Indiana and Chicago here in the next couple of years, and that's something WNBA needs.
That's the exact argument and point I've been making at work and to some of my other friends is that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are your Magic and Larry. They are not single-handedly, obviously, because it takes two to tango, but they're saving the WNBA, right? They're generating the water cooler talk. They're generating clicks, views, conversation on primetime cable. People are talking about the WNBA, and games are selling out that haven't sold out in decades. Right? That alone puts them in the conversation each for Rookie of the Year, and I think you could make a case for, at least Caitlin Clark MVP.
Yeah, I know. A lot of it is a foregone conclusion. Caitlin Clark will win MVP, or not MVP, Rookie of the Year. Excuse me. And I get it, and we've talked about this before. A lot of times when you do have the ball in your hand, you're a little more impactful. You could argue you're more impactful, especially if you look at the records. The Fever made it over 500. I think it's the first time they've been over 500 in God knows how long, long time. It was almost a decade or something crazy. Right, and Chicago's slipped. I believe close to being 10 games under 500. A lot of these games where Angel Reese has put up these numbers, they've lost, and that's where you make that argument of having the ball in your hand the whole time makes you slightly more impactful, especially in a sport like basketball, and that could be a reason why you see the Fever project or jump up the standings like they have been, and essentially they're going to make the playoffs. It seems almost like a foregone conclusion, where you see Chicago's kind of they started to slip, and now they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives from here on out. Maybe because their best player isn't having the ball in their hands the whole time, right? So it is one of those interesting dynamics. I'd be interested in what our basketball expert, the great Doug Howard, would have to say about being a point guard like he was, and seeing that, but. You're right. It's good for the game of basketball in general. It's good for the WNBA. It's nice to see, we're seeing record. I feel like every week, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark break some records. Yeah. Right. And what's cool is they're breaking records because they're different positions. You had a big man or a big woman and a small. Right. You got a point guard and a power forward center. You got that dichotomy, which is. I love that. That makes it. If they're both playing the same position, you could argue that makes it a better rivalry, quote unquote rivalry, right? Because they would be guarding each other, things like that. But I love the fact that they're playing two different positions, and you're seeing them almost revolutionize in a lot of ways those positions at that level. Because to be coming in at this age with this lack of experience on the stage and to do what they're doing is unprecedented. That's why you're seeing those records broken, and like I said, ultimately that's good. For the WNBA and the game of basketball, it makes you have to pay attention. It's no longer I just choose not to. No, you're seeing this. This is nuts. You're seeing stuff that's never been done before. Right? I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Turning to the world of golf, Hei-Ran Yu, she won the LM championship at TPC Boston. She won in a playoff over Jin Young Ko. Yu shot a final round 64 to force the playoff. It's crazy. She shot 62 in the second round, but then in the third round, she shot 78. So she went 62, 78, 64 to force the playoff and win. Right? That's crazy. The mental game to be able to bounce back from that, right? You have that huge swing of emotions, and to come back and put together a 64 and win the playoffs, I thought was really cool and really impressive.
Story writes itself.
Yep. Anything else, mimosa-wise?
Yes. Not into any one female athlete in particular, but I did see that the University of Alabama is hosting a year-long celebration to commemorate and honor 50 years of having women's varsity athletics on their campus. We saw a little bit of it in their first football game of the year against Western Kentucky. They honored the past 50 years of women's athletics in a tribute video highlighting their success at University of Alabama going back 50 years. It's cool to see. I can't recall ever seeing anything like that, and they haven't said in particular what's going to be coming in the next year of athletics, but to kind of commit to events, activities, and things of that nature, I think that's pretty cool. It deserves a little bit of recognition, if you ask me. So I just wanted to highlight that. Good for University of Alabama.
Roll Tide, y'all.
Roll Tide.
AJ, anything?
Nope.
Don't worry. I don't think there's anything left in this show that puts a damper on Chicago.
There you go.
And all that.
We're right into it.
So that's going to do it for our Mimosa Minute this week, brought to you by Main & Co. Order your modern mimosas today at mainsip.com and be on the lookout for new beverage releases like a mezcal, margarita, and we've heard even some beer for those of you out there. Main & Co. championing women's athletics since 2020. So that's going to go ahead and bring us to our final segment, which is our favorites segment. It's not just our favorite of the week segment that we do. This is about our list of our favorite blank, right? We come up with a different category every week, and we fill in our blanks as to what are our favorites. Not what we think are the best, right? But our favorites as sports fans, what were our favorites? And our favorites always are brought to you by One Legacy Title and Escrow in Jacksonville, Florida. Visit them at onelegacyflorida.com to see how they can help you with your next house closing. One Legacy Title and Escrow, because your legacy matters. And this week, we decided in honor of college football, getting kick-started and going full steam ahead, that we're going to highlight our favorite college football jerseys of all time. If you were listening a few weeks ago, we did our favorite Major League Baseball jerseys of all time. Kind of that similar thing, right? Not what do we think are the best, right, or the most iconic, but what are our favorites as sports fans that we like to see out there? So who wants to go start us off?
I'll go. You guys clearly know more about college football than I do, so I'll just get out of the way, and I'll make room for you guys to go at it, okay? So treat my list accordingly. Feel free to say and do whatever you want to it. Honorable mention, I'm going Michigan Wolverines. I shouted out the Big House for my favorite college stadiums, so it's only fitting that they return this week in an honorable mention. It's just a classic jersey, right? Yeah. It's classic. It's an icon, right?
Yes. You know who else has that same iconic look on their jersey? Princeton.
Really?
They have the same helmets with black and orange. Like it looks awesome. I strongly considered both of them this week because of that. It just looks cool. It's unique. It's cool. I think Delaware, the Fightin' Joe Bidens, might have the same thing on their helmets.
Yeah, similar style, slightly different color.
But I think Princeton is up there in the age of how long they've used it, like Michigan has.
Yeah.
So I got Michigan Wolverines, honorable mention. Number 5, I'm going Tennessee Blackout. University of Tennessee, the Vols. I love those blackouts. Those jerseys are black as night, and the neon orange sticks out. So I guess it's neon, but it might just burnt orange, right?
No, they're not burnt orange. They're orange. Someone earlier at work, but it's like a
dreamsicle.
Yeah, yeah. I'm surprised you went with the black ones over the gray ones. I kind of like the Smoky Mountain gray ones. I like a little better than the black ones, but they're both awesome.
I'm a sucker for a blackout, and when they debut the jersey and they preview it, and they have the mannequin with like the blackout visor. Oh, it just looks so cool. It cuts through. So number 5, I went with the Vols blackout.
It's a good one.
Number 4, I'm going to give a special shout out to the United States Naval Academy midshipmen. I think their jerseys, their regular jerseys are awesome. I love seeing, because people in the Navy, they get to take their commission either in the Navy or in the Marines. So like they usually have some sort of insignia depicting like which branch they're going to. And they usually roll out some special ones too for, Army, Navy. They also have some special ones for Notre Dame, I believe. So that's a good one. I love just anything the Naval Academy comes out with. I used to have a jersey that fit me when I was much more youthful and little.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Number 3, Fighting Irish. We're going Gold Dome, classic look. Rudy.
He was offside.
But I'm going Fighting Irish for the number 3. Give me the blue with the gold helmet, baby. I want Rudy to dress in my spot. Number 2, we're gonna roll Tide. We're gonna roll Tide right back to Alabama.
Roll Tide, y'all.
It's simple, quaint. I personally believe that their home jerseys are understated as well, and I think you can only get away with something like that if you're just a truly great program. I love those jerseys. It's just it has like an old timey look to it, in my opinion. I can appreciate and enjoy that. And number 1 shouldn't be any surprise. I think this should be in everyone's at minimum top 5. I'm going with the boys that Phil Knight is taken care of. I'm going Oregon Ducks. The Nike uniform. You see, I got my Nike Patriots uniform on today. The Nike uniforms out there in Oregon that Phil Knight is designing and redesigning because he wants the Ducks to look the freshest. And I feel like they always stand and deliver when it comes to their uniforms. So that's my list. I'm out. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you. AJ?
Yeah, I can jump into it. And the way I thought about this was when I think about favorites, it's when I think of college football on Saturday and who I'm watching some of those big time night games, it's who am I thinking of and what am I seeing out there? And a couple honorable mentions. I'll give a shout out to Alabama. I think it's just classic look. It's just classic football. It's what you're seeing every single Saturday. Also want to give an honorable mention out to Texas, whether you want horns up or horns down. I'm just thinking through some of my favorite college football moments, and Vince Young prancing into the end zone. I'll use prancing. Past all the USC defenders to win that Rose Bowl back in 2005. It's just one of my favorite memories of college football, but I'll jump into my list now.
Speaking of horns down, I love the fact that people have become so pissed off about Texas making a big deal about it that it does not matter who's playing. Everyone will just horns down the camera. Yeah. Just the Notre Dame, Texas A&M during college game day, just everyone horns down. You're not even playing. You haven't played them in years. Screw it. Like you're just so tired of that. Of them getting upset by it, right? It's like the classic thing of, someone says something you don't like, instead of ignoring it, you make a big deal and you get upset about it and you do this and this and this, and so they want to do it more. That's exactly what the horns down is. I want to do it every time, and I have no reason to dislike Texas. Been to Austin, freaking loved it. Amazing.
You see more horns down at college game day than you do anything else. It's like the best symbol. But anyway, jumping into my list here, thinking through again, favorite jerseys on Saturdays. Number 5, I have Michigan. Again, classic look, timeless look. You're seeing them every Saturday. Just an all-around great jersey. Number 4 is the Penn State, their whiteout jersey, where they have the black jersey with the white pants and white helmet. Again, when you're thinking about college football, you're thinking about that game every year. Most likely, in the past, it's been either Ohio State or Michigan at home. That's what I'm thinking about with college football. Third on my list, and I don't know if everyone agrees with me, and unfortunately they've had a rough 10 days here, is Florida State. I really like the Seminoles uniform. I like the arrow on the helmet. I like the color scheme. It just matches up really well on the field. I think that's just a big time college football brand you gotta put there. Number 2 on my list is the Ohio State Buckeyes. There is no, I got head shaking from Nick disagreeing.
Well, how can we highlight Ohio State? You couldn't have just gone with anyone else.
Classic jersey. Got the Buckeye leaves on the helmets. It's what you want to see out there on Saturday. And then my number 1, I think, jersey. I think you can go almost 2 different ones. There's almost a 1A and 1B. It is the orange or green uniforms for the Miami Hurricanes, which I'll also throw them down real quick.
That's become the trend now.
But it is I think they're just an awesome look. I think it just screams cool. I think it just screams just a great team on the field. And I'm just imagining, that 2001 team, either in orange or green, just going out there and stopping everyone. And that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about college football. It's those jerseys there on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Great
list.
So before I get into mine, I was looking through it, and I guess I just might really like the color blue for whatever reason. I know, and when we did, because you're going to hear them, and a lot of them are like the same color, and I didn't realize. For me, it just there has been studies about like when you see people wearing certain colors, how you react. Like orange makes you kind of react like they're aggressive, whereas like light blue or blue has a calming effect, and that must be what's going on because you're going to hear almost all of these. Just looking at are like light blue. But they do have some timeless looks to it, so I don't want you to think that I just picked
Number 5, UNC.
Yeah, no, right. But I'll start off my honorable mentions. I have 2. I have Wyoming. I love their jerseys. I know the boy loves their jerseys. I love the script with it. It's so cowboy, like it fits cowboy. And I believe Stevie, when he went out there to do his geological survey stuff, said that those jerseys are supposed to, the gold represents like the gold mine, and like the brown is representing like the mountains and like the countryside. So I think that to me is really cool. There's a story behind it. We can just pick random colors to be unique. This represents all of Wyoming. And I love that their jerseys are simple, right? That they remain pretty much unchanged. And I like that they look good with the brown and with the white. I think that's hard to do. And I thought about that with a lot of these jerseys of, can you look good home and away? Right? Yeah. My other honorable mention is the Naval Academy's Blue Angels jerseys they wore during that Army-Navy game in the snow, I believe, in Philadelphia. Those are so freaking cool. If you have a chance, check those out. They every year they hook up the Naval Academy and West Point with phenomenal jerseys that honor a lot of different parts of those branches of service. And those Blue Angel jerseys, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen someone wear on a football field. If that were a jersey you wore full time, it would probably be number 1 on my list. But for a special, just one-off game, that's why they're honorable mention. But man, is that jersey and the helmet so freaking cool, man.
That's a good pull.
It's so really cool.
Good pull.
Mm-hmm. Number 5, I have UCLA. The only reason UCLA is not higher on my list is because they've changed the helmet to have a gold face mask. I think that looks weird. For having the gray face mask give it that like timeless look, so that Troy Aikman, UCLA, love those jerseys. That light blue with the gold just offsets really well. And what's cool about it too is it has a great look against their rival USC. When they play that game where both teams have the colored jerseys, the red and the blue, it looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
So UCLA is my number 5. Number 4 is BYU with the royal blue or like the lighter blue, not the navy blue. That was like their original look. And again, that is such it's simple jersey, but it stands out. Like you recognize that brand right away. It looks so good. They had a jersey last year that they did where it was all black, and that was one of my favorite all black jerseys. I'm not a big fan of the all black, to be honest, but when BYU did it, for whatever reason, it looked so good with that blue. But the BYU just royal blue jersey, love that. Number 3, the Ole Miss light blue. The old like Archie Manning light blue Ole Miss jerseys are sick. Those things are sweet. I wish they would wear those every year, every day. Like those are phenomenal. I love the Ole Miss light blue. It has that it looks like it stands out now the same way it would have stood out in years past, and I think that's so cool. Number 2, the West Virginia University gold jerseys, when they wear the gold with the navy pants. I love that look. They wore that this week. It didn't work out too well for them. Oof. But, man, is that cool. I know Cal used to wear jerseys like that too, but their design was a little different. So I had to put the WVU above the Cal jerseys. Mm-hmm. It just the gold with it's hard to put that as your primary color and have it look good. And they execute that perfectly. It looks so good with what they do. So the West Virginia gold jersey, love that. They should wear it every time. I mean, I actually do. It is almost cooler that they don't wear it every time, right? It makes you excited when they do. But man, is that a sweet jersey. And my number 1 is the Texas Longhorns. And a couple reasons for it. One, it fits that iconic mold, right? It is iconic. It is recognizable. Their color scheme, that burnt orange, no one has that, right? I think Tech is maroon and burnt orange is supposed to be what they are.
It's not. Yeah, it's not the same though.
It's not.
Tennessee's a different shade. Yeah,
exactly. It's such a unique shade of orange. And what I love about it is it's understated, but it has some cool things with it. With the Longhorn logo on the helmet is awesome. And the best part for me with Texas, and why the reason they're my number 1, is that their home and away jersey look just as good. There's no drop off to me with the all whites versus that burnt orange and white. No drop off at all. It's that iconic. It stands out. It looks clean. Again, it's the best jersey. Some of the other ones that are the iconic ones, I just think Texas just takes it to that next level, especially with the color scheme, the simplicity, but it has those accents with the logo, the little 2 stripes on the sleeve, give that little more complexity that is, to me, needed in that. It's not bland, and that's why I like it. That's why it's my number 1.
That's fair. Good list.
It's a good list. You should cross my mind. That's a good call there, Nick.
Yeah, that's. And if they could just get rid of the gold face mask, I don't understand it. It looks so off-putting. It's weird. Gold is not a color you want on your face mask. But yeah, I love the Michigan. Like I said, Princeton. Those cross my mind. Harvard. I don't know if you've ever seen Harvard jerseys. They're equally old-timey looking. They got the weird colored pants. Those are pretty cool jerseys as well. There's a lot of good stuff out there. College football to me has a lot of better jerseys than what you find in the NFL, because NFL I feel it's how can we create something that could be easily mass produced to create and generate revenue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And whereas you get the college jerseys,
personality.
Exactly. And it's how can we echo and stand out with some tradition? Utah a couple years ago, they had a couple players unfortunately pass away. They were friends. They passed away in 2 separate instances, unrelated at all. And so they made a helmet that honored both of them, had something to do with their number, because they wore the same number too, right? And then they made a helmet that had a rose in it because they went to the Rose Bowl, right? And then they had someone make a helmet to honor the USS Utah, a warship that served during wars. And so they had that the ship, the submarine or whatever it was, on the helmet. That cool stuff is not happening at the next level, but you have that happen so often, and it's so unique and so cool. It goes back to what we're saying with rivalry games and rivalry trophies. It's just an added part of the college game that makes it so special. Yeah. Anything else before we wrap this up here, gentlemen?
Let's put a pretty bow on it, Nick.
Yep, I love it. Like to thank everyone who listens and watches with us. If you have any feedback for it, we would love to hear it. We love any input you have for us. We do this for you guys, right? On some level, it's selfish because we get to enjoy what we're doing here, but on another level, it's to help and make someone else's day a little brighter. But before we get done, again, we want to highlight the new addition to our family, Stella Vesci, being born a couple days ago. That's why the boy isn't here. I want to thank AJ Pittis, our DGen Gambler, for filling in tonight, doing a fantastic job. Yep.
Yeah. No, thank you guys for having me. This was a ton of fun, and come on anytime.
I love it.
Standing invite.
stay tuned. We are going to have a special edition with AJ that we're going to record right after this about some NFL picks and betting props that he's going to go through with us after the show. So make sure you look out for that. But as always, for the man, Stephen Comlow, I am the coach, Nick Vesci. As always, be decent to each other. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.